I'm Andrew Keenan-Bolger. You're listening to the Theater Podcast with Alan Seals.
Hey everybody, welcome back to an all-new episode of the Theater Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Seals, and our guest today is AKB, Andrew Keenan-Bolger, who grew up a child star after his parents were kind enough to kind of relocate their entire life so that he could pursue an amazing opportunity that kind of fell in his lap when he was around 10 years old. But he's super cool, stayed down to earth, which, if you ask me, is kind of unusual for somebody who finds success so early in life. And he became a social media genius, kind of invested early on in the platforms, and just, opened up here on the podcast about actually the toll it took on his mental health and how he sort of had to pull back for a while and find out who he is online versus who he is in real life and keep them separated for a healthy set of boundaries. So, such a cool interview and a cool guy. Can't wait to share it. Find me online. As you always do, leave a rating and a review wherever you're listening. And everybody now, please enjoy this episode with Andrew Keenan-Bolger.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Our guest for this episode was last seen on Broadway as Jessie Tuck in Tuck Everlasting. Other Broadway credits include Crutchy in Newsies, Buy Me Papes, Mary Poppins, Seussical, Beauty and the Beast, and A Christmas Carol, in addition to the first national tours of Spelling Bee and How the Grinch Stole Christmas. On the TV, he's been seen in The Undoing, The Blacklist, The Other Two, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Nurse Jackie, and Looking. He is co-creator of the series Submissions Only, co-author of the book series Jack and Louisa, a social media genius, and is now part of the amazing ensemble cast of Dracula, a comedy of terrors. Now playing at New World stages, Andrew Keenan-Bolger, welcome to the Theater Podcast.
Oh, thank you. Great Transylvanian accent, my gosh.
Thank you. Now we have to do the whole episode with this accent, which, if I keep going, it's going to turn into something probably Irish. I don't know.
I default to Jamaican, I find.
Do you really?
Yeah, it always gets a little Caribbean somehow, which is a problem in the show because I think I do 8 different accents.
I was going to ask about that because if we're allowed to, I don't know if there's any spoilers in here. There's Dracula, and then there's unnamed everyone else other than what is it, like actor 1, actor 2, actor 3, because you all play a bajillion different characters.
Yeah, I play like 7 different characters in the show. And every actor, other than Dracula, doubles a whole bunch of roles. It's like basically a non-stop quick changes, people playing multiple characters in one scene, just a huge laugh riot of a 90-minute play.
And as we're recording this, I haven't yet seen it. I'll see it in a few days. But from the production photos, which I'll post some on my Instas, maybe in my threads too, because why not? Sure. And the costumes are no joke. They are heavy and like real. They look authentic.
Yeah, it's funny. I was sort of picturing a little bit more like campy, like throw on an apron and then suddenly you're the maid. You're like, no, we're jumping into full Victorian, ornate, brocade, lace-up costume. So there's a whole other show going on behind the scenes with the dressers who are, I'm sure, burning about like 3,000 calories a night, just running around getting us into these elaborate, incredible costumes.
That sounds incredible. I wish there was, if this were some weird invasion of union rules and privacy, backstage cam.
Oh, totally.
Because I think it would be so cool to watch, especially dressers. Dressers have one of the hardest jobs because if they mess up, the whole show has to stop.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I will say, it was a challenging tech process, just figuring out all these changes. I'm used to tech slowing down when they're like, oh, we have to focus this light. We've got to like fix this bit of automation. Almost all of our stops were, okay, we have 12 seconds to do this insane costume change. Let's run it like 5 times to make sure that we can do it. Okay, we need to add snaps to this. We need to Velcro this part. Yeah, it's wild.
Are there any like Frozen style on stage full audience view like magic quick changes?
There are indeed.
Ooh.
Yeah, you're gonna have to come and check us out at New World. Yeah, there are multiple on-stage costume changes. So,
all right, and some of them not even of the cast. No, I'm kidding. I would not put it past Gordon Greenberg and Steve Rosen, the writers of this thing. So full disclosure, I was involved with the recording of a version of the script in 2020.
Yes.
That, across Broadway Podcast Network, we already recorded and released Dracula in 2020 as an audio comedy, and I was talking with Gordon Greenberg last night. I ran into him, and I was like, "Is there Lord? Was it Lord Swivelhips? I think, or
sure.
the Elvis character, right?
Yes.
And because we had John Stamos in the recording. We had John Stamos do the recording. I was like, "Is John Stamos please tell me he's making a cameo in this thing."
Just in all his free time, he's like, I'll come and do a little cameo.
But is there did you listen to the audio comedy at all? And
I totally did.
Did you really?
Oh, it was such an amazing. I feel like, especially as an actor doing a new work, to when you're deciding if this is a show that you want to be involved in, having that like incredibly professional cast recording, or not cast recording, I guess like taping, with like amazing actors. There's like Ashley Park and Annalee Ashford and like James Iglehart, just like real comic geniuses. Having that as something to look at before I started and being like, oh, I get what this tone of the show is. Oh my gosh, it's like incredibly like high camp, super madcap. It was really helpful. And then a lot of the lines have changed, obviously, to be adapted for the stage. But I would encourage people to go check it out. It's really funny, and it's like a really cool serialized just audio drama.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess what's some of the things that you've enjoyed as part of the process of things that have changed? Because one of the questions I had for you was, because it is established and there have been multiple incarnations of this, which I guess in the grand scheme of things is not so different than any standard play getting workshopped and staged and whatever, right? But do you, now that it's officially in this off-Broadway space with the off-Broadway contract and it's opened and the script is locked and et cetera, do you, how much of you, like Andrew, did you get to bring to each of these characters to like say, like, can we try this here? Or was it just more like stick to what we've got, kid?
No, it was very much, we hired these actors for a reason. It's an ensemble of like 5 just full clowns, honestly. If we're being honest, we've all got some clown blood in our veins. So they very much encourage. They're like, we know what worked for one actor in our out of town in Montreal is not necessarily going to work for y'all. So yeah, we brought a lot of it to the project. And then even with my main character, Jonathan Harker, I think after we did the table read, they were like, I feel like you were doing something very different, and we are interested in maybe taking this character into a direction that we had not anticipated, but has always sort of been like in the back of our brains, would it be okay if we tried out these things? And I won't give anything away, just for spoiler alerts with the plot, but it made me so happy to see that they were willing to change some stuff based on what I was bringing to the table.
Are you you and the cast working with the dialect coach too, or is it just let me hear your best buy me papes?
Well, I know. I also I am not. I would not say dialects are like necessarily my strength. I did not have like conservatory training. I think I took like 1 semester of it. So yes, they were able to bring in a dialect coach because I think I only speak in an American accent for 3 lines total. Everything else is, I think I do British RP, I do like London, like shabby kind of guy, I do Cockney, Irish, Scottish.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's a lot. And oftentimes I'm changing accent like second to second. And there have been some times when I'm like, oh, that one came out Scottish. That was definitely supposed to be Southern, but You know what? We're gonna go with it. Luckily, I think the spirit of Dracula is so just like ridiculous and silly and goofy and campy that it allowed the play breathes every single night. We're responding to what everyone is doing on stage. If something goes wrong, it honestly only amps the comedic potential of the clowns on stage who are responding to it.
I was actually I was going to bring that up too, and normally I don't get into like, you know, the item that my guests are always on the podcast to promote. You know, we like slip it in so it doesn't feel like we're hitting the listeners over the head. But we just dove right in because I freaking love the show. But I want to read, let's see, this 90-minute gender-bending quick change romp features a pansexual Gen Z Count Dracula in the midst of an existential crisis. I mean, you can't get any better than that.
Yeah, we're cramming it in. We've got everything. Yes, it is. I think that is a fair description. And I think the one thing that we really didn't necessarily anticipate is just like how much of a laugh riot the entire show is. I feel like it was such a relief after rehearsing just in one of these like dull rehearsal rooms with the same 5 people as your audience, like trying to sell them on your jokes and being like, oh gosh, are we even funny? I think you lose a sense of like what's actually going to play. And then just our first performance, I don't think any of us anticipated the reaction that we were going to get from the audience. I honestly don't think I've ever been in a show where folks are laughing harder for 90 straight minutes. It's been hard almost to time some of our comedic timing, because you're like, oh, I did not anticipate that we were going to get like mid-show applause because this person completed an insane quick change in like 10 seconds and then like reemerged on stage as a completely different person.
I love it when the design is so complex and fine-tuned that either set pieces or costume changes get the applause.
Yeah, truly.
Right. Was that I guess part of the rehearsal process or back up to the audition process too? Because I always wonder, like for comedies, I feel like the auditioning is more of a leap of faith maybe on the creative team, because you can't find the comedy in shows a lot of times until you're working with your other actors and you're working with the script and you see what works, what doesn't when you get it on his feet. So how do you audition comedy versus, like, I feel it's easier if you're reading a dramatic monologue, you can tell when somebody's really, I mean, I don't know. I feel like saying, oh, that person can do drama is a lot easier to say, oh, that person can do comedy, but maybe that's just my inexperience of never having directed anything.
I totally agree with you. And I think we were lucky enough that, so James Daly, who is our Dracula, he had done it in the Montreal version, and I think the creative team was like obsessed with this guy. He really is amazing. He's going to be a total breakout star. This is his first it's his American debut in theater or film. And so he was actually at my audition, and I got to do like a chemistry read with him, which I think was really nice because he also sort of set the tone of like, how big are we going? Because you never really know. And then I was also the good fortune, they were just doing chemistry pairings with people who were auditioning. And the person I got paired up with was Jordan Boatman, who ended up being the Lucy who got cast. So I think they got to see how we were playing with each other, and we're like, oh, these people are doing a similar sort of style. They look good next to each other. But I would have assumed that would have been impossible to just guess, because you really never know. You could get in the room, and luckily I've worked with a couple of other people in it. Ellen Harvey, who plays basically all the male characters in the show. She and I did Mary Poppins together, and along with a couple other like film projects on the side. And I know her style, and just a big fan, and we work really well together.
Did you get to work with Gordon Greenberg, Steve Rosen before this?
I had worked with Steve Rosen on my web series, Submissions Only. I think he was in our second episode, so he was one of our very first guest stars, and just encouraged him to like play around and do a lot of improv with the role, and was hysterical. And I've also just been a big fan of him from he hosted this improv, like this kind of night of improv with the Broadway community called Don't Quit Your Night Job, that is really hilarious and is the writer of a musical that I saw a whole bunch called The Other Josh Cohen. So big fan of him. Gordon, I had seen a lot of his work and like really respected him as a director, and he's also a co-writer on this. So we knew each other, but had never worked with each other like on a theater project. And yeah, it's just been really nice. It's a goofy room where I think we are all just being ourselves, and then on break are like gossiping and dishing about the world and what we're all watching on Netflix, and like, yeah, it's a good buddy time.
Yeah, Steve I was on my radar for the other Josh Cohen as well, and we've just been in contact ever since. He and David Rossmer, just incredible writers in their own right too. But let's back up to little Andrew, because I think like you grew up as a professional child actor, and then of course Sister Celia is also successful in her own right. So your family, it seems, was it just you and Celia, or did your parents, were your parents actors, performers too? Where did all of this start?
Yeah, so we grew up in Detroit, Michigan. My parents not performers in any way. I think my dad played the organ at church, but that's like about as musical as we got. And it really, honestly, it's all Celia. She's like 6 or 7 years older than me, and I just grew up seeing her doing like community theater. I think as soon as I could stay quiet long enough to sit through a show, I was seeing her perform. And we also have a middle sister, Maggie, who is also a teaching artist and a playwright and director. So all three of us are all in the arts. And I think part of it was like honestly a carpool situation where it didn't seem tenable to drop one kid off at tennis, one at gymnastics. We all got dumped at the same theater. And if there was ever a show that didn't cast all three of us, then we just wouldn't do it as kids. So, yeah. And then when I was about like 10 years old, my parents, kind of on a whim, brought me to New York to audition for Beauty and the Beast. And I have to assume they never actually thought I would get it. I think that they were thinking it was more a fun chance to do a like road trip to the city with the kids. And instead, while I was in the room, this has never happened to me any other time in my career, they were like, "Can you tell your dad to come in?" And they were like, "So we're offering him a job. Can he move to New York by Friday? Because he has to start rehearsals." And
you're 10.
Yeah. And God bless my parents, who were like, "Okay, yeah, we're going to make this enormous sacrifice and pick up our lives in Detroit to help our kids like follow their dreams." Something I could never imagine making a sacrifice for any other person, but I'm so grateful, because I think as soon as I landed in the New York theater community, I was like, oh, this feels right. This is what I will spend my life trying to get back to.
Hang on, everybody. We're just going to take a quick break. All right, now we're back. I mean, when I was 10, I think I was watching He-Man, you know? And that's probably why you're in Dracula and I'm a podcast host. But yeah, I think that speaks a lot to your parents. Gosh, you're right. That's so much sacrifice. Was it in the middle of the school year too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was in January.
Wow.
Yeah. They had to find a whole new public school for me to go to in New York. And I think within that same hand, they were also, after I did Beauty and the Beast for a couple of years, they're like, okay, time to move home. And I got cast in another Broadway show, and they were like, it doesn't really feel fair to us who have jobs in Michigan to like make that kind of sacrifice. So we're going to move home. You're not going to do this Broadway show. And so then I moved back to Detroit very shortly after I ended up getting something else. And it was on the road, and they were like, okay, we could maybe work this out if like Celia was my guardian for a little bit, and I had like an aunt and uncle who were my guardian. But yeah, it was both selfish or selfless on my parents' part, and then making sure that I understood that this is something special and not something I should take for granted. I think it was just honestly good lessons to learn as a person coming of age in a business.
That's insane. And really amazing on them to just let you follow that passion. Because it could be like, no, we can't do it. We're not going to make it work. Are you allowed to say what you had to turn down?
I mean, I guess, yeah. I've been close for years. I got cast in The King and I revival with Donna Murphy, and then
oh wow,
couldn't do it. A shame.
Yeah, that would have been great to work with Donna.
Oh, total.
I was watching. Side note, unrelated. I was watching Tangled with the kids the other day, and then I was like, oh shit, that's Donna Murphy.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
like
she's so
incredible. It's great how many of these old movies that grew up and kind of shaped some of our childhood, and we're like, oh yeah, we're working alongside these people now. That is so much fun.
The best.
That's fun. Did you have any of those pinch me moments ever, or what was the last one you had where you're like, I'm working alongside the voice of such and such that I watched when I was 10?
You know, when I had this digital series, Submissions Only, which was all about auditioning for theater in New York. I created it in 2010 with my collaborator, Kate Weatherhead. And we did it for 3 seasons. And every episode we had like a slew of guest stars. And it was pinch me moment after pinch me moment where I was suddenly directing some of the like great luminaries and giving them direction, which felt insane. Like, and then people like Audrey McDonald, Cheetah Rivera, Kristen Chenoweth, like these people who I still to this day like hold on the highest of pedestals, realizing that all of them still want to do good. It didn't matter that it was a show that got broadcast on YouTube. They wanted to be good, and having people like Audra ask you questions about, what if I try it like this? Is this okay? Like, what are your thoughts on this? Which one do you like better? And having to put on your professional hat and be like, I honestly like the second version more, not just like, whatever you do, Audrey McDonald, it'll be amazing. Which, to be fair, whatever she would do would be amazing.
I was going to say, I mean, she could stand on her head and act like Ace Ventura, and it would be awesome.
Truly, truly.
That's so cool. And so let's switch over then to Submissions Only for a second, because I remember hearing about it years ago, and I just noticed that it was produced by Kevin McCollum. So you had like a full producer, and like Kevin's no joke. He's like Six is probably the biggest thing he's got on Broadway right now, but he did Doubtfire, Something Rotten, Drowsy Chaperone. I'm just looking at his resume.
The original Rent. Yeah.
Original Rent, Avenue Q, Ragtime, title of show. God, this dude has done everything. And then he's producing your web series. So how did that happen?
So Kate and I made the first season. I think we made it for $2,000, and it was just us pooling our lunch money together. And he saw it after the first season and brought us in for a meeting and was like, listen, every single one of my hits has not been a commercial property investing in a established creator. The things that I have made the biggest success on are things like Rent, someone who had no Broadway credits, Avenue Q, title of show, like all of these things. He's like, I think my style of producing is find what is not out there, and that is what is actually commercial. It's not trying to follow trends. And so he was like, I understand this may not make any money. This is also before streaming was a thing. Like Netflix had just converted to having a digital model, but had not had any TV shows yet. And so we were putting this show up on YouTube. It was a 22-minute comedy, and all of the advice that we were getting from everyone is like, no one is going to watch TV streaming online. They want to watch like a 3-minute show. And Kate and I, for some reason, did not follow that advice. And we were like, no, we want to make a TV show and we're going to put it online. And I think Kevin saw the value in that and then helped us with enhancement money for the second season, and then fully produced the third season and gave us not only like the resource of truly money, but also all of his connections and helping us get all of our guest stars and introducing us to press agents. And it was amazing. I'm super, super proud of it. I almost wish we were not so ahead of the trend that it could have been able to have a wider release. I think nowadays probably there is an actual model for creating a TV show that is streamed, but the fact that it felt groundbreaking and something that there was so much goodwill for in the theater community that all of these guest stars agreed to show up to something that had no kind of reference point. I always thought was really amazing. Other than there are these two kids, they're trying to do something new. Give them a chance.
Yeah. Oh, that's so smart. I think it speaks to them too about, they're trying new media, they're trusting, because you never know when the next Steven Schwartz is going to pop up with a web series, right?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, they had no clue. But have you thought about doing any sort of re-release, remastered or whatnot? Because especially some of the you could just go back and remaster the audio. There's all these digital filters now.
Totally.
Or add some cut scenes or whatever the case is, right? Like there's all sorts of ways. And I was looking at the comments this morning, like when will season 4 come out? Tell me there's going to be more.
Yeah, I don't know. We've never actually, I'm not sure Kate and I have talked about this. So whatever, I'll just drop some. We shot a TV pilot of it a couple of years ago. For like a new submissions only. It didn't get picked up, but there is a TV pilot out there that lives that I'm super proud of. The timing is sort of weird. It all happened during COVID, so I think maybe if it had been timed differently, we might be on TV now. But yeah, I hope. I still think that there's still like every time I'm at a stage door, something will stop me and be like, I have to be honest, this was one of the reasons I moved to New York was because I saw people being really creative on the internet and also adjacent to theater, which is my other love. So I hope there's still a future for it.
I sort of think now would be a good time to revisit it because there's so much on TV now that has Broadway people and stuff or Only Murders in the Building, for example, and you've got Ben Platt doing so much with Theater Camp. So maybe that's a conversation to circle back on.
I'll put it out there in the universe. I appreciate that.
That's right. I think it's worth it. Is that what got you started on the social media train as well? Because I've actually heard multiple people reference your accounts as the gold standard of how to grow.
Oh gosh. I mean, I think a lot of it was just timing. Facebook came out when I was a junior in college, and YouTube, I think that same year as well. And I just invested early on in those two platforms. And so with YouTube, it was just me putting up clips of the concerts that I was producing while I was at University of Michigan and putting up backstage vlogs of when I was on the road with Spelling Bee. And at the time it was some of the only content for people who were interested in theater. Now that seems so ubiquitous. I mean, for Dracula, we have a social media person who does all of our social media, but I think at the time it felt like a new frontier that no one was doing. So I've always put my stock in theater fans, especially young theater fans. And and it's something I still really believe in, because especially in the theater world, where if the gold standard is Broadway, that really only exists in 30 or so theaters in one town, in one 10-block stretch. It's one of the last art forms that you really can't mass produce, which I think is what makes it so special, but also I think cuts off a huge fan base of people who just want some access to it.
Yeah. Oh, I 100% agree, which is sort of mostly the reason why I created this podcast, because I wanted to have the conversations and be able to share them with people who may not get the access. Yeah. And now 5 years on, I'm still going. It's a passion project and a labor of love, but it's a lot of fun to meet amazing people such as yourself. But yeah, the social media game, I call it a game, and it's just something I still haven't wanted to make the time for. And again, you can get into the analytics and the data. And do you just post what you like to post for pure enjoyment reasons, or are you actually like analyzing what you're posting? I'm always curious about people's personal philosophies on all this. You're like, oh, with that post I reached an extra 100,000 accounts, and that post with my earlobe, oh, that wasn't cool, but my elbow, they love that one.
I think when I started out, I was just posting everything. I was posting what I ate, where I was working out, what bookstore I visited. I posted everything about my life. And I think that initially is what grew my account. I honestly, though, if I'm being honest, I've had a weird relationship with social media. It has not been great for my mental health in a lot of ways. I think when you open yourself up and ask for attention online, you don't always get to choose what kind of attention you get. And there have been a lot of things that have made me not feel great about myself that have happened through social media. So I am a lot more cautious about how I use the app. And not cautious in terms of like, I'm not going to post hate speech. Like I was never doing any of that, obviously, but I'm more cautious about what I get to keep for myself and for my husband, honestly. The character Keenan-Bolger, which I am on Instagram and TikTok and I guess Threads now, I think I made him up. I don't think he's real. He is a version of myself that I have allowed the world to see. I think the real Andrew Keenan-Bolger, I think my close friends and my family know, but that I have decided is not for consumption.
Hang on, everybody. We're just going to take a quick break. All right, now we're back.
And I think probably I have had a lot of friends in this business who show every moment where they're in their dressing room getting ready, talking about their day, and it has had great success for them. And I've also seen people who share a lot and it ends up hurting and not feeling good and feeling like you have to manufacture parts of your life or you have to overshare to get more viewership. And I think that worked for me when I was young, and I encourage if it's working for you, go for it. But also, if you want to keep some stuff that is just for yourself, I think that is great too.
That is, I love that someone as successful as you are still realizes that, realizes that it's not healthy to post everything, realizes that I think it's chemically addictive, right? The likes, and then the studies that prove this, right? Right? Like you're getting the dopamine release and literally chemically falling in love with receiving likes. So you have to have that to be happy over time. And it just occurred to me the irony of an industry where you have to be authentic and real ultimately to be successful on stage. If you do that on social media, it's actually a detriment to your health in a lot of cases. Like it seems like this struggle, this dichotomy. So I guess I was going to ask, is it a problem? But yeah, you just said it was. But how do you manage that problem? How do you manage that conflict? Because when you have to be real and authentic and like you're doing stage doors and you're doing all this stuff and people are recording you, you don't get to control what they post.
Right. Of course. I think it is, it's being honest with my audience. I think the people who have followed me for years, I get to do, I think as someone with a big social following, doors have been open to me that are insane. And to me, it feels crazy to me as well. Like I've gotten to go on vacations for free. I get paid to do brand deals. There are all these wild things about my life. And I think not pretending like that is totally normal. I think I can share with my audience, like, yeah, I am on this trip to Singapore and I'm getting paid to go on it. This is nuts. This is so wild. I feel so lucky, but also understand this is not the real world. And this is maybe not even aspirational because I think my platform just took off at the right place at the right time. And then I think also making sure I try to post useful content for my followers as well. I have a lot of I think young queer people who follow me, and making sure that I'm providing a lot of resources. providing things like tips for coming out, like things like on National Coming Out Day, providing some history, providing links for kids who might need to talk to someone, making sure that I'm like doing equal parts service. And also, anytime I do a brand deal, I also a percentage of any of my earnings I donate to a foundation that I'm liking at the moment, places like Ali Forney or the Trevor Project, or during COVID, I was donating 100% of, not 100% of my earnings, but I was donating all of my like earmarked earnings to the Actors Fund for all of my friends who were not able to work at that time. So yeah, I think it's being honest with your audience, but also I know that people are following me because they want to know what's up, and having a responsibility to share some of that as well, especially for the people who are not going to be able to fly to New York to see Dracula because they're high school students, but still want to feel like they can experience a part of it. I think is very important.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That is, I think it's unusual, if I may, to say somebody who grew up basically in the age of social media, who started professional theater at the age of 10 and may or may not have had the appropriate reflection is what I was going to say, but it's not the right word, perspective to know what it's like to live, I'll put in air quotes, a normal life. That you seem to be so freaking humble and living a normal life. And you're not like, look at me, I'm entitled to everything, which is what I think a lot of social media influencers want to do or are doing.
Also, to be clear, I have not figured this out either. What feels good to me one month, the next month will feel crummy. I have not figured it out either. I think none of us could have anticipated how social media would have changed the world. I could have never anticipated how it would have changed my career. I was just out there trying to share and trying to honestly document. A lot of it is for me as well. I like being able to look at the blogs that I made in Newsies and revisit these like landmark parts of my life, like the literal good old days. But all to say, like, I haven't figured it out either. And I am always eager if anyone has any kind of lived advice of how they are able to compartmentalize the version of their self that lives online with the version of their self that exists as a person every single day.
That's a very good question. And I have a love-hate relationship with the... I know why this is done. The people who post the ugly cry pictures, the downtimes are like, they don't post it in the moment, but they take a picture of it. But still, I'm like, wait, you thought you're going through a trauma, you've had a bad time, you're literally ugly crying, and you still have the forethought to take a picture of it. Which I guess I don't know. I don't know.
Shrug,
big shrug on that one.
If you feel okay doing that, go for it. I also, one of my things that my husband has taught me, my husband worked for years as a journalist, and specifically as a digital journalist for an online publication, and he is always saying, anything that you put online, just view it with the least generous lens, because the internet always will find something to say, and rarely is it, you look great, you're amazing. And even for the hundreds of people who will tell you that, there will be two people who say something shitty to you, and that's going to be the thing that, at least for me, that's the thing I remember. And so I think trying to expose myself to as little of that as possible is how I've been able to stay online, but also have a healthier relationship with it.
I'm fascinated by it. All right, but we don't need to keep digging into this. So Submissions Only, your web series, it turned into the book series, Jack and Louisa, right?
Yeah.
What is Jack and Louisa?
So yeah, I think between our second and our third season, we got an email from someone at Penguin Random House saying, "Hey, would you and Kate want to come in for a meeting?" And I think both of us were like, we can't write a book. Like, what are they talking about? We're filmmakers who make stuff on YouTube. But God bless this woman, Jordan Hamisley, who is an editor at Penguin Random House, was like, I love submissions only. I think that there should be a middle grade book about two kids who are theater fans, and I think that it should be written by you. And she gave us the task of try just writing 4 chapters and an outline of the first book. And we decided that like Kate could tell the story from the girl's perspective, I could tell from the boy's perspective, and that it would kind of be like almost a letter writing courtship. And so we brought them the first 4 chapters, and we got a book deal out of it, a 3-book book series book deal, and then had to write 3 books. But it was an incredible challenge. But also, I'm so glad I didn't know anything about it, because I think the first one was easy to write, the second one was a little harder, and the third one was like incredibly hard. It is very much the more you know, the harder anything is. Yeah, but they're out there. I just finished my 4th book, which is one that I wrote solo. And now the woman, Jordan Hamisley, who was my editor on that first book, is now my agent. I'm still working with her like 10 or so years later. Wow. And yeah, I'm excited for this next chapter. And
are they? How long are they? Are they young adult novels, or
they're for middle school age? It's funny. I think weirdly, most people reading them are probably high school and older, just because I think that's where my audience lives. And a lot of people find it through me rather than like are at their local library and see it pop out. But yeah, it's for kids. I think like 8 to 11 is who we were writing for. But I also I sort of had it in my head that was like kids writing, and that we somehow had to dumb down a lot of like the story that we wanted to tell. And we're encouraged by Penguin, like, no, write it all. We will scale you back if there's language that is not appropriate for that age level. But they were like, we think that your character, Jack, that you're writing in the 3rd book, we would love to see him come out as gay. And I was like, wait, for like a middle schooler is reading this? Wow. I could not fathom that, because I didn't get any kind of material like that when I was a kid. And thinking of like how much less lonely I would have felt had I in middle school read a book where the protagonist ends up being gay. I was so amazed that, this was also 10 years ago. I don't think marriage equality had happened even really. So yeah, it was a really cool challenge, and knowing that kids are smarter than you think, and they understand a lot, and that you should not necessarily, I think, tamp down any of the kind of big thoughts and big ideas that you have, because kids feel those sometimes even more acutely.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that would have been great. I think I don't treat my kids. I have two that are now in 2nd and 3rd grade, and I don't treat them like they're stupid at all. I mean, because they ask such amazing questions.
Yes.
And you can tell they're thinking about this stuff, and they just don't have the life experience to know how to categorize it yet, but they know it. They intuit all of this stuff, which I think is why theater and storytelling speaks to so many people, especially children, because it's allowing them to start to understand and experience these scenarios that they may or may not ever get to actually go through in real life. You know, same with adults too, but I think, you know, especially it's important for children. So. Oh
my gosh, yeah. The number of lessons I learned from cast recordings from when I was like a 10-year-old nerd. Also vocabulary. Vocabulary was super handy. Taking the SATs, I can't tell you how many words popped up where I was like, oh, I know this word from the Lacusa Wild Party.
That's a very fair point. When did you meet your husband? How did you guys meet?
So we're coming on 10 years actually.
Everything is a decade old now.
I know, it's true. We have a cute little meet cute story. We were actually set up. We were set up by none other than Ben Pasek, who set us up on a blind date, which I really owe it to him. He's a good guy, but like, he's a really good guy in my eyes, because he introduced me to my husband.
That's so cool. Wow. What did you go on your first date?
We went to, I mean, this is very random, 54 Below.
Oh,
which
appropriate.
he had never been there before. He was like, "Where are we?" And immediately I'm like, "Oh, he's not in the business. God, what a catch!" I'm like, to meet someone who doesn't even know what 54 Below is. Yes, we went to a Darren Criss concert together.
Darren Criss, 10 years ago.
Yeah, I went to college with him as well.
Was this 10 years ago, Darren Criss? Was this Glee? Was this in the midst of Glee?
I think it might have been like just slightly post Glee.
Right.
I think it was when he was
Glee anymore.
Yeah.
It's all blurring together. We're getting too old, man.
I know. Oh my gosh.
Okay. All right. Well, let's wrap with 3 questions that I ask everyone.
Sure.
To end the episodes. Number 1, just what motivates you?
I think what motivates me the most is seeing really impressive work from other people. When I see a good show that there isn't a performance in that feels otherworldly, I do not do the thing where I'm like, well, I could never do that. I think that, but I find that seeing someone excelling so much or reading something that is so incredible, that is what really lights the fire under my ass to create and to push myself. So absolutely that.
And Instagram likes. Just kidding.
And yes.
Just kidding. Okay, question 2. What advice would you give your younger self and younger people listening now starting out down a similar path?
I think I wasted far too much time in my career and just honestly as a person trying to emulate the artists who I was obsessed with. I think like I grew up being obsessed with like Nathan Lane and Kristen Chenoweth and always trying to kind of do their bits. And I would say my advice is that like New York theater already has Kristen Chenoweth and they already have Nathan Lane, but what they don't have is you. And I think all of the success that I have found, it was never for me trying to do someone else's shtick or to be like another person. Sure, I could be influenced by certain performances, but ultimately I've been cast for things that are characters that are the most like me, Andrew, as a person, and not because I am this transformative character, I think.
Interesting. I like that. Okay. Last question, hardest one. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so hard. Like maybe Sunny in the Park with George. I feel like ever since Stephen Sondheim's Passing, I've just been revisiting all of those like incredible musicals of his, and you find something new in the lyrics every single time. Yeah, so I think I would say Sunny in the Park, also because it's like such, for anyone who is a creator or an artist, like that show is such catnip for us, and it speaks so much to what it feels like to try and make something and to put it out in the world and to have hope that when we leave this earth that we are leaving behind something, whether it be a painting or a child or a piece of music, that we have something that will be remembered by.
Oh, that's beautiful. All right. And everyone listening now, go to DraculaComedy.com. Get your tickets for Dracula, a comedy of terrors. Where else can we find you on the socials? I know that obviously I don't have to ask if you play the game, but where do you play the game?
Oh, I play the game I'm on all of them. At Keenan-Bolger. You'll find me on the TikTok, on the Threads. Not so much the Twitter/X anymore, but on Instagram, of course, is my OG.
Do you do Facebook anymore?
I don't do Facebook anymore.
I feel like that's not your demographic.
Not so much. It was a great way to keep up with, I think, kids from high school. I still have an account. It's just private, and I really only use it to stalk people I had crushes on as a teenager.
Very fair.
What are they doing? Are they still in Michigan?
Are they still? Is my life okay compared to theirs? Schadenfreude? Keep on going up. I am on Instagram, Their Threads and Facebook. X, I think I'm throwing away, at theater_podcast. Leave a rating and a review wherever you're listening now. Turn to your neighbor and say, hey, neighbor, I'm listening to Andrew. Man, I need to slow down this morning. Hey, neighbor, I'm listening to Andrew Keenan-Bolger on the Theater Podcast. And you need to listen too. Thank you to Jukebox the Ghost for the intro and outro music. And AKB, thanks so much, man. This has been a great chat.
Thank you for having me.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.